there could be a problem.
If you show this publicly, you're open for a lawsuit. Okay?
It's telling lies that gets us into trouble. You'll always be safe if you tell the truth. And anyway, even when you think you're getting away with it, God knows you're lying. How? Oh, because God knows everything. He sees everything. Right through the roof? Right through the roof.
You're the one who said you walked on the moon when you didn't. Calling the kettle black, if I ever thought of it. Saying I misrepresented myself.
Away from me.
You're a coward and a liar and a thief.
What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain. This is the world that you know.
Hey everybody, this is ODD. I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is, I spent the past couple of days tracking down every piece of media that I could that pertains to the moon landing hoax, and we're gonna go over all of it. The bad news is that no matter how obvious it was that they staged the moon landings, and no matter how many times they rub it in our faces in the mainstream media, many people have been bamboozled into believing that landing on the moon 6 times in the span of 3 years is entirely possible. They also think it's reasonable that we haven't even thought of going back in over 45 years. And the fact that NASA has repeatedly admitted that we can't go past low Earth orbit isn't the slightest bit worth worrying about. And by the way, this is the reason why my channel slogan is where sci-fi and fantasy merge with reality. A lot of people misunderstand it and they think that I'm trying to discredit myself right away by saying that like what I'm talking about is fantasy and sci-fi, so it's all fake. What it means is they show us tons of truth in movies, TV shows, video games, etc., but they pass it off as complete fiction, and my videos is where that truth finds its way back to the real world. You know, I like to say anyway. A lot of people make good videos about movies and media and whatnot. As a hardcore movie buff, it's my offering to the real truth seekers out there. We're all a little different, and we all have our own things to offer.
One of the things that runs through the entire history of the space age and before the space age, and this is one of the leitmotifs that also run through the book, is the direct relation between science and science fiction. You're not at this too long when you don't come to understand that it's the science fiction people, the SF people, as one of my friends calls them, who laid the blueprint for the people who actually built the rockets and planned out the programs. And I did a fair amount of thinking about that throughout the entire process. Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, who was the great Russian rocketeer and the father of rocketry, and who we never heard about during the Cold War for reasons that will not mystify you. Tsiolkovsky and Hermann Oberth, the German, the father of rocketry there, and our own Goddard, Robert Goddard, all read Jules Verne. They all read From the Earth to the Moon, and they all had, if you'll pardon the expression, had their fires lit by that wonderful voyage. They all read H.G. Wells, The War of the Worlds, and so on. These people were energized and captivated by science fiction. I started the book off, in fact, going back to Daedalus, because I had to come to grips with why exactly do we do this. There are cynical answers, and they're relevant. One is that corporations in aerospace want to make a lot of money. Another is a lot of generals on both sides wanted to get the high ground for a supposed advantage, whatever that meant, and we're still not sure we know. But beneath that, there were the dreamers, there were the sci-fi people, there were the people who wanted to go for what reason? This is what I had to try to come to grips with, and when I went back to Daedalus, when I went back to Greek mythology, it occurred to me that one of the reasons is transcendence. I came to realize in the course of researching the book that what I was dealing with was not in reality, was not hard-nosed businessmen who were trying to keep their stocks up and generals who were trying to one-up the enemy. What I was dealing with was members of a religion. That's exactly what this undertaking is. Religion. What else to call people, I'm talking about serious engineers who design colonies on Mars and interstellar missions that they know they will never live to see. Religion. What else to call them but members of a religion, as people in the Middle Ages started to build cathedrals they knew they would never see finished. Religion. And what is the trait that has propelled this all of these years? I remember being at the annual meeting of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, which I go to every year, but several years ago, the magazine Omni was giving out buckets full of free buttons. And the button they were giving out that year said, "The meek shall inherit the earth. The rest of us are going to the stars." And I believe that there are people around everywhere who truly believe that, and they are the ones who fuel, if you'll pardon the expression, who fuel this entire undertaking. In terms of it being a PR ploy by NASA, the answer is yes, and the answer is NASA is unexcelled at doing PR. I don't mean that, however, in a pejorative way. As I explained in Florida, Janet Reno does PR, Ken Starr does PR, the Clinton White House does PR, the Marlboro Man does PR, and Slobodan Milosevic does PR. Why shouldn't the space agency? They've got something to sell, and they're trying to sell it. And so is the Planetary Society, Bruce Murray's, and the late Carl Sagan Society in Pasadena. These folks are a force. They're out there, and the first thing you do is say, well, it's pipe dreams. On the other hand, as Sandy Kramer, who lives right here in Maryland, who was involved in a lot of the space program for Lockheed, likes to say, the money is spent on Earth. It isn't spent in outer space. And the people who are in these organizations, like the Mars people, like the Planetary Society, are the cutting edge of everybody who comes after them. You can't do any of this stuff unless you dream about it. And they're doing the dreaming.
You've been living in a dream world, Neo. This is the world as it exists today.
Got a conference room. What do you see in the background? A rocket taking off. You see the ball Earth, of course.
Sweet dreams are made of the
Sweet dreams and pointing towards the ball Earth and the globe. I mean, always the programming. I mean, someone could have watched this video, say, 20 years ago and haven't seen it since. But it's stuck in your mind. Subconsciously, it's stuck in your mind.
People can go there and live.
Well, I mean, that's a long ways off.
It's not going to happen for a long
It's
time.
light years away, Ricky, so you couldn't just go there.
Well, you just have to fucking swim or float, as some people say, through space. Get there. Faster you fucking float through there, you're there.
You couldn't swim to another planet, Ricky. You gotta, it's in space, so you'd...
Well, space is water, right?
We set sail on this new sea because there is new knowledge to be gained and new rights to be won, and they must be won and used for the progress of all people. For space science, like nuclear science and all technology, has no conscience of its own. Whether it will become a force for good or ill depends on man. And only if the United States occupies a position of preeminence can we help decide whether this new ocean will be a sea of peace or a new terrifying theater of war.
It's an upside-down ocean.
Ricky, space, there's no air in space. There's no water.
No kidding, there's no air.
It's not water, though. It's just, like...
But when you
it's
see
like a
people in
vacuum.
space, they're just like...
That's because there's no gravity and no air.
There's no air, man. No gravity.
They're floating.
Yeah.
Where do you float, guys? Where the fuck do you float?
Well, you float in water, Ricky, but you can float in the air, too, which is what they're doing. Well, not really, because there's no air there. You're getting me all fucked up. You float in space because it's a vacuum. There's no fucking oxygen. There's no gravity. There's no anything. It's just an empty void.
And there's no water. It's not an ocean.
Can you swim on land? Can you float on land? Can you float in the air? Can you swim in the air? How does that all work, anyway?
The Soyuz rocket, Ricky, you know, they launch it out of Kazakhstan. It goes up into space. It docks with the space station. People go in. They hang out there for a few months.
Nice.
You know this, right?
I know a guy from Kazakhstan, the guy we watched that movie about.
No, Ricky, that's Borat.
Borat?
He's not an ass. He's
You don't
not
know
even,
Borat.
Well, no, but I know of him.
But he's not an astronaut. He's not even real.
So the rocket goes up and crashes into this fucking thing. And
It doesn't crash
Docks.
into it. You know there's a space station that's going around the Earth, right?
I've heard about it. I don't believe it till I see it. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm sure, I don't know, people claim there is one, so sure.
Ricky, there is one. It's not a hoax.
It's like a ghost?
No, Ricky, it's up
It's
in
like-
space. You can't just
It's like
see
God.
it.
It's like,
I mean, you
people
can
say
see it when it's
they
going
were real,
over.
but until I see them, say, hey, ghost, or hey, God, or whatever, you can't totally believe it. I mean, you believe it, but you're like, in the back of your mind going,
Ricky,
I don't know.
these are scientists, man. They're not going to fucking lie to you.
They lied about the moon, didn't they? No one ever fucking went on the moon.
Oh, here we go.
There we go.
Mr. Conspiracy Theory.
I do not say that we should or will go unprotected against the hostile misuse of space any more than we go unprotected against the hostile use of land or sea. But I do say that space can be explored and mastered without feeding the fires of war, without repeating the mistakes that man has made in extending his writ around this globe of ours. There is no strife, no prejudice, no national conflict in outer space as yet. Its hazards are hostile to us all. Its conquest deserves the best of all mankind, and its opportunity for peaceful cooperation may never come again. But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too.
This is Tranquility Base. The Eagle has landed. Jesus H. Christ. Houston. We're on the fucking moon. Over. Roger, Tranquility. We copy that. We cannot believe you are on the fucking moon. Repeat, cannot fucking believe it. Over. The moon, for Christ's sake. The moon. Over. You're cleared to hook up lunar equipment conveyor to walk, fucking walk on the moon. Over. I'm descending the ladder. See the Earth. The entire planet Earth. Love of Christ. We read you. Tranquility, over. On the bottom rung of the ladder. Just one more step and I'm... Tranquility? Holy living fuck. Are you fucking believing this? Over. We read you. Over.
Okay, cut.
Wow, Neil Armstrong. Hey, wait a minute. You're supposed to be on the moon. I just saw it on TV.
Oh, there's a tape delay and with all solar winds.